Do pink flowers inspire you to paint them? While I love many kinds of flowers, it's pink flowers that really inspire me. Yet it took a long time for me to find pigments that would work for the brilliant pink flowers I wanted to paint. Enter Opera. Opera is the brilliant pink that I was looking for. I was so happy that I could finally paint the brilliant pink flowers I wanted to paint. But what I didn't know is that it would fade with time. And this means that if it's in sunlight, it's going to fade in months. Oh, I was so disappointed. And then a friend turned me on to Opera Rose. Oh, it's not opera, it's Opera Rose. It's different. No, it isn't. It's the same. It's the same pigment. It's the same problem. So, here I am back to square one again. Oh, but then I saw an article in a watercolor magazine about Shinhan premium watercolors and how vibrant they are. Well, I quickly purchased some, including pinks. But again, I hadn't done my homework and I had more Fugitive colors in my collection. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Fugitive pinks that I have in my collection, the pinks that aren't Fugitive, and the one pink that will not fade at all, even in the strongest light. This is about the pinks in my collection and is not a thorough treatise on all the pinks available in watercolor. But this will give you the means to do the research you need in order to find the pinks that you need for your watercolors. These are the pinks that I have in my collection. This is Opera by Shinhan. This is Opera Pink by Daniel Smith. Opera Rose by Winsor Newton. Bright Rose by Shinhan. Red Rose Deep by Da Vinci. Quinacridone Pink and Quinacridone Lilac by Daniel Smith, Permanent Magenta by Winsor Newton, and Quinacridone Rose by Daniel Smith. I've swatched all of the colors so that we can see what they look like. I've swatched them in the order that I just presented them. So this is Shinhan's Premium Opera, and you can see it's a beautiful color. In fact, if I compare it to Opera Pink by Daniel Smith, it goes on a lot more smoothly, as well as more smoothly than the Opera Rose by Winsor Newton. You can see they're very similar. What makes these colors fade, what makes them Fugitive, is that they are a base pigment, PR 122, all three of them, and a fluorescent dye has been added to them to make them this brilliant. What you can see in the Opera Rose, somewhat in the Daniel Smith, but especially in the Winsor Newton, these little flecks of fluorescent color that have separated from the pigment. You can see a little bit here. So these actually granulate a little bit with comparison to Opera. So here's the Winsor Newton, here's a Daniel Smith. These versions of Opera, which are the same color, are all Fugitive. Then there's Bright Rose, which I thought was a safe color, but it's not. It also fades. The other colors are ones that are relatively safe to use, and I'd say very safe to use. So here we have Red Rose Deep, and it's really not a pink until you dilute it out, which might look fine on whatever flower it is you're trying to paint. Quinacridone Pink, we're now starting to see a little bit of blue in this compared with this deep rose. It is a different pigment, PV42 versus PV19. And then moving on to Quinacridone Lilac, which is, interestingly, PR122. It's the same pigment. But this one is considered very good. These are all very good. And by very good, it really means very good. It's not just sort of Fugitive is terrible, which can be pretty terrible. I've seen another Fugitive color practically go away, but it took years. These really do last, and in fact, I read an article where with, I think it was the PR122 versus the PV19, get darker with time. I mean, it was barely perceptible. If you didn't have the two samples side by side where one had been in the window for 8 months and one was protected, you would never have known. So these are, even though they're rated very good, they're very safe. And in a painting, the color change is so slight, you would never know. Permanent Magenta is also very good, and the one that is excellent is Quinacridone Rose. Now you might be asking, okay, they're both PV19, so how do they look so different? Well, I had the same question. The little bit of information I could find was it has to do with the manufacturing process, whether there are additives, and how big the particles are as to whether you get a bluer color or a warmer color. And that's all I know. So if somebody knows more about it, put it in the comments. I'd like to know, because these to me are dramatically different. But they're very nice. This is really more of a purple color, and this one is really more of a pink color. But you can mix them and get something in between. The other thing about Quinacridone Lilac is it's fairly red compared to, say, Permanent Magenta. When I think lilac, I think of the lilacs in my yard, and they are purple. Some might be a more pinky purple rather than the other because we've got two different varieties, but this is really more of a pink rather than the purple. I think of magenta to be more of a red color, but this is more purple than the lilac. In fact, if you go to Daniel Smith's site, you'll see their swatch of this is actually quite purple, looks more like this. But in my hands, and I know of another artist, she found the same thing, it's really more of a pink. So this makes Quinacridone Lilac a great alternative to opera to get those pinks. Now, it's not the same, but it's very nice. You can mix them with other colors and get some brilliance. I'll show you a couple examples of where that works. Here's a pink lily that I poured using only Quinacridone Lilac and Permanent Magenta. And look at how pink it is. This shows you the possibility of using these very good Lightfast pigments and still get a brilliant effect. I'll have the link for this video at the end. This is a purple lily, but there are pinks in it. In fact, if you look at the base color that I poured before I put in the details, there are a lot of pinks in it. I used only Permanent Magenta and Winsor Violet for the purples. This is because colors are relative. No color stands alone. It looks the way that it does because of the color that it's next to. This is the key, looking up these pigment codes and finding out about them. If you understand these pigment codes, and this goes for other fugitive colors, not just pinks, Moonglow being a very popular color that is fugitive. Look these pigments up before you paint something that you plan to sell or for commission. So that gives you the tools to look up what you need to learn before you do your paintings, and especially before you sell your paintings. So what do you do if you've already painted a painting that you now know is with a fugitive color? Well, other than leaving it in a drawer, the first thing to do is to put it under glass. Glass will cut down a little bit on UV. Now, ideally, you'll want to put it in a room where it's not direct sunlight. Otherwise, you probably will get some fading. The other thing is to consider museum glass. Museum glass not only protects against UV, well, probably by about 99%, but it also prevents glare. And that looks really nice on paintings, especially if it's for a commission. So I recommend to all my customers who buy something from me to make sure that they use museum glass. If you'd like to see how I painted those two florals without fugitive paints, check out these videos.